So, welcome to the Bookbibuli podcast and the centenary episode. It's the 100th. We've hit a century. Who would have thunk it? When we started, might have been a hallowed vision. Reaching 100 episodes on a podcast, well, it's not an exclusive territory. With a podcast run with a resident host, same every time, you can do it. But we envisioned it differently. We wish to have a unique child talking on a different book for every episode. We wanted to give voice to children, to have a say for their books, as it should have been always. We wanted to hear their views, reviews, to celebrate the readers in them, to make them known to the world, to let the world know them. That made it special. That made it satisfying. That made us feel proud for all the children, readers represented, which helped other children to read and read better, of course. What made it more special is to have Miss Paro Anand in our celebration of readers, of children, of children's literature. Thank you for making this memorable for all of us. And now it's time for me to introduce her and talk a little about her. But then she does not require an introduction. She's very, very well known. Terrorism, riots, sexual orientation, wars, reality. Subjects we want to introduce to our children, but if we are afraid to, we are scared of it. We don't know how. We are scared of disturbing their sensibilities. We are fearful of unsettling their view of the world. And we are absolutely terrified of the uneasy questions that will follow. Usher in the books by Paro Anand, she's not afraid to talk about these difficult topics. She's not found lacking in words to sensitize the young adults in their own language. And she helps us build a healthier society. Why most of the children's authors find it best to shun these topics as if they never happened, as if the world is all magical and wizardly. Not bad, but it's reality as well. Don't we miss the opportunity to prepare our next generation to handle similar situations? Isn't that what books are supposed to do? To prepare for life by exposing the possible, learning from the past. She is the other, an author, and our own. Thank you, ma'am, for being here today. We wish more power to your creed.
Thank you.
And without further ado, can we please have Ms. Paro Anand on the screen, please?
I'm here.
No.
Okay,
I'm here.
ma'am's here.
I'm here.
All right,
Yeah.
ma'am's here. Okay. All right, folks, now the treat begins. So I think, ma'am.
Sorry, I thought you were going to put it on the big screen or something. That's why I was.
No,
that's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
Okay, so ma'am's here, and first and foremost, thank you very much for being with us today evening. I apologize again for the technical glitch that happened today. Has never happened before, but I think the 100th was supposed to be special. Not like this, but unfortunately. And so I would request everyone else to kindly keep their microphones off, and the children who will ask the questions, their microphones will be automatically, they will be switched on so that they can talk. Otherwise, we'll try to remain on mute so that there is not too much of background noise or anything, right? And so I think we will start with the first question. That would be Arya. Can you unmute Arya, please?
Hello, ma'am. Good evening. So, you write reality fiction. Today, your fiction meets reality. Your character meets me. I have a few pimples of my own. I don't know if you can see them on the camera, but quite a few. So I was wondering how you came up with the.
I think we've lost Arya in the middle somewhere. So shall we wait for him to join, or?
Richa, maybe we move on and to another kid's
Come
question
back
and come
I
back.
think that would be
and
better.
come back to Arya.
Yes, I believe so. Can you unmute Manan, please? I think Manan has sent in a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Manan, please.
Good evening, ma'am. I'm Manan. I'm 9 years old. I study in class 4th Ryan International School in Delhi. I like reading your books. Though the secret idea of the world was genius and being Gandhi, the words like geniosity and boring sun gave me a good laugh. I would like to say that there isn't a person who hates reading. It's just that they haven't discovered their right book yet. It's motto at Bookbibuli. Was Born Free the one for you?
Sorry, I missed the last bit of your. Manan, could you just repeat the last bit?
There is.
You want? Please, Manan, go on.
Just the last bit. There isn't a child who doesn't like to read.
It's just that they haven't discovered their right book yet. It's a motto at Bookbibuli. Was Born Free the one for you?
He wants to know
Great
if
question.
Born
Thank
Free
you.
was the book for you.
Yeah. Great question, Manan. And it was a waste of time. I felt that it was, I wanted to be in on the action and not reading about other people's having been in on the action. But I came from a house of readers. And we had this 1 hour during the evening when you'd finished your homework. So just by force, I used to go to that they were open bookshelves in the sense that children, us, and it converted me to a reader. My other interest besides theater, plays, I was an actor from a very young age. And I started picking up adult play scripts, books that were lying there on our shelves. So there was a very famous German playwright called Bertolt Brecht, and I read them all, Tennessee Williams and all, 11, 12 years old. And it was the on path of reading after that. Soon after that, I started making up my own stories as well. So yes, I totally agree with you that the right book in every hand. What I like to read, you may not like to read. And what your read doesn't connect with me. But you just have to have an exposure to books. I think that's the key. And I'm going to say it bar through this evening, that you have to have access to books. Only then will you want to write, or which book you want to read. If you had no access.
Absolutely. I guess that makes perfect sense, because that is something that all of us feel, that if you find the right book, because all of us are different, we all have different ideas, we all like different things. And therefore, I think, yes, we should like different books also. So why the same trope should be repeated for each and every one of us? I think Arya is back now. Can you unmute Arya so that he can continue with his questions? I don't think he was done showing his pimples.
Yeah, so as I was saying, my name is Arya, the character of Pimply Panda, even without meeting me.
I met me. Arya, I met me. I grew up with the most terrible pimples. I had what I used to call the three yolk egg, three fried egg pimples, the ones with three pussy things on it, a deep love and empathy for pimples. I know what you're going through. And yeah, but if you see, I don't have pimples now. So there's hope. Arya. So
I
my
get that.
characters are sometimes based on something that I have been through. Um, you know, I was never thought to be much good at anything. Uh, but writing, I am the person I'm writing about. So I'm not Paro writing about Pimply Panda, and I'm not Paro writing about Umar um, or Chandrasekhar from being Gandhi. I am that person while I'm writing it, which makes me a very difficult person to live with. And I really have to thank my family for being ever patient. Sometimes when I'm very crabby and in a bad mood and I'm behaving a little weird, and my family asks, "Are you writing another book?" And I say yes, and they say, "Oh no," but they put up with it.
Okay, so there goes Arya. There is hope for you yet. I hope you are feeling hopeful. I think the third person who's on our list is Sana. Sana, are you there?
Yeah.
Can you please unmute Sana? It should be either in the name of Sana or Jayashree, I believe.
I'm actually already unmuted.
Hi, Sana. Good to see you.
Okay. Hi.
Good evening, ma'am. I am Tanvi Rao. I study in 8th grade in Shikshanpur. So first of all, I want to start by saying how much I love your book titles. For me, I'm a person who actually cannot start reading a book if I don't like the subtitle. And like if the title is dull, not reading the book, but your titles are so eye-catching, so striking. And that's one of the reasons that I want to read all your books. And you start reading a book and it's even brilliant than the title. So my question to you is, they say that to become a reader, one of your parents must celebrate an author. Did you make this maxim come true? I mean, are your children also readers?
First of all, I don't know. I don't think I'm a worldwide celebrated author. Wish I was. But um, I think uh, as they grow up in their homes, in their schools, wherever, need to see people reading and people reading for pleasure, right? Not just um, not just textbook or a workbook or a newspaper, but just reading a book that's for the fun of reading. And I think the more a child grows up around books and around readers, the more chance they have to be a healthy reader. Again, I'm going to draw a similar kind of analogy than I did earlier. And that is that if a child grows up around healthy eating, they're more likely to be healthy eaters. If they're growing up around samosas and paranthas, they're more likely to be doing that as their meal. So I think it's the same thing with reading. And yes, my children are readers. In fact, my son, when he was in class 4, went to his school library because he had read one of the Asimov books, and he really loved it. In class 4, he went to the library to get another Asimov. Also, I think to show off a bit that I read Asimov, but he couldn't reach the index cards, in those pull-out drawers. He couldn't reach it because he was short, like me, and so he asked the librarian if she could give him a muda or something to stand on. And she said, "What book are you looking for?" And he said, "Asimov." And she said, "No, no, you're too young for Asimov. You shouldn't be reading Asimov." I hadn't stopped him from reading it. So he just came home. And when we went next to a bookstore, he bought the Asimov books. He read some, he found some too difficult, and that's fine. The question of choice, the question of access, I'm going to quickly tell you, in a bookstore, buying some books, and there was a young boy who came in. I think he might have been about 4 or 5 years old, came in with his mother, and he had got some money for Rakhi, and he came in very excited and was like, "Can I buy this book? Can I buy this book?" And she kept turning to him and saying, "Do you think it's an age appropriate book?" He's 4 or 5 years old, so he would look at her. I'm sure he didn't know what age appropriate meant, but looking at her face, he knew it wasn't. So he would put down the book. Then he picked up another, then put it down. And it went on for a few times until finally she chose a book for him. He made a very sad face. And when they were leaving the bookstore, his shoulders were slumped and and guaranteed he was not going to read that book. Whereas if he had bought one of those other books and it hadn't been age appropriate, he would have left it, but he would have at least tried it. He would have tried a bit harder because it was his choice. So that's one. My grandchildren, and I have three, are avid readers. From the time that mm, they were very tiny infants, they would be read to. Um, my one of my grandsons is in Shikshantar, actually, and they love to read. And when somebody comes over and they want to show off to them, they don't bring out their toys and all, they bring out their books. And they're still pre-readers. They're not yet 4-year-olds, but they love books, they know books. And if you're, in a hurry past bedtime and they're needing to get to sleep and you're trying to flip some pages and reach the end quickly, it's no, 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 you left that book out. You left that story out. So again, you've got to read, you've got to have easy access for the little ones. We have bookshelves which they can pick out every book they want. Um, uh, so yeah, but readers make readers. It doesn't mean that if your parents are not readers, you cannot be. Um, Sort of strike out and make your own path too. That's also possible. Yeah.
Anything is possible. That is a wonderful thought. I think the next in line is Suvir Mendirata. Can you please unmute him?
Good morning, ma'am. My name is Suvir Mendirata. I'm from class 5 in Lotus Valley International School. And my question is, from guiding your kids to read and guiding the next generation, your grandkids, did you have to make any changes?
Very interesting question. Actually, yes. When I was bringing up my own children, I think I was just so busy with being a parent that I didn't give as much mind to what they were connecting with and what they were not. I was lucky with one nephew of mine who loved a book called Tinker Tanker, and he has now presented it to his own children. He has become an avid car and vehicle maniac and mechanic. He has his own vintage cars and all, and he really feels that Tinker Tanker kind of guided him towards this passion. But what I've discovered in the next generation, as you very nicely put it, I think some of my early writings were flawed. There were mistakes in it. I think for younger children, because I wasn't writing for my children when they were very young, right? So this is the first time I'm writing for very young children, for my grandchildren and other kids out there. The storyline has to be much clearer. There has to be some repeated something that goes on, that they can join into and feel that they're reading. Um, I think maybe I'm more on the correct path with my books for older children. But for the little ones, I think I have learned a lot from my grandchildren on how to write. Yeah.
I guess that's the reason why they say child is the father of man. But
Yes, absolutely.
okay, I think we all learn a lot from our children, and that is an amazing realization, because children always have a very fresh perspective, something which I think with time we all started getting a little jaded in our views, but children always have such amazing fresh perspectives. It's a wonderful realization. Moving on,
So
next
since you use the word perspective, the other day one of my grandsons was sitting on the pot, and he likes to read while he's sitting on the potty. And I'd given him a book that he wasn't familiar with, so he didn't quite know the story. So he was asking me to read it. So I'm standing in front of him, telling him, flipping the pages. And it was a very sweet book. And he looks at it and then he's thoughtful and he says, he's not yet 4. He says, "What an interesting perspective."
wow.
And I said, "What?" Because I thought I must have heard wrong. But he was really looking at the perspective of what was happening in the book and used the words because he's such a reader. He was able to use this big, not only word, but sentence.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's interesting. See? Okay, moving on. I think the next in queue is Krish Bhatia. Can you please unmute him? Krish?
Yes. Good evening, ma'am. My name is Krish Bhatia. I study in Presidium School in Gurgaon, and I'm in class 10th giving boards right now.
Okay.
So my question
Wow,
to you
thank you
is,
for being on.
we have moved on from the days when the only books for children were Panchtantra. Now we have so much literature being printed for children, covering a lot of shelves in bookshops. Is it enough in quality? Have we really moved on?
Wow, fantastic question. Um, we're moving. We're moving forward. And here I'm going to take the risk because people really criticize me for saying this, but I think it's the truth that in English language, children's literature has moved forward quite a bit, is moving forward. In many Indian languages, it hasn't, especially for teenagers like you. It sort of really dries up. And I totally agree with you. I grew up um, having no access to Indian children's literature beyond Panchtantra, Mahabharata, Ramayana, Jatka tales. And these were never meant for children. They were meant as learning and teaching tools for adults. The Panchtantra is a collection of stories on governance. It's to teach the princes how to be a king. That's what it's about. These are not children's stories at all. And while many of them, all right, fine, but many of them are really not okay for children to be reading. Also, it's changed. Our perspectives have changed so much. So in the Panchtantra, I've done a play, I've acted in a play on the Panchtantra. And reading through it, I found all the women are either shrews or downtrodden or just meek, beautiful creatures who waft along in the wake of their very much more competent men. They have no personality of their own. And of course, we need to change that. There's a lot of children's literature now in English coming out of India. Again, access. I'm glad that you feel that it's filling up bookshelves in libraries and bookstores. I fear it isn't. I fear that it's not enough, because I go into a bookstore very often. I try and go into a brick and mortar bookstore wherever I am, and I ask them to show me children's books and Indian children's books. And it's still Panchtantra. It's still Sudha Murthy. It's still, Rabindranath Tagore. It's still Premchand. And so I asked them, I said, all right, I ask children when I go to school, do you know any Indian authors? And they say, yes, we know Rabindranath Tagore, Premchand, Sudha Murthy, Ruskin Bond. So I say, okay, do you know any Indian authors who are not dead or over 70? I think I'll have to increase it because I'll be 70 kind of soon. But but basically that's what's still out there and popular. Popular, I don't know. And I think that it's popular because you kids are not the buyers of the product that we're writing and publishing. We're writing it for you, we're publishing it for you, but you don't have the money power. Your parents, your grandparents, your teachers have the money power. And so they are making the choice for you. That's not fair, because they are choosing what they know. But the world has changed. It's as though they wouldn't buy you a hoodie, or they wouldn't buy you a pair of jeans, or they wouldn't buy you Nike shoes because they didn't have it at that time, or they wouldn't call in for a pizza sometimes because they couldn't do it. But it's so ridiculous if you think of it in those terms, So there needs to be more. And I would really love to hear from all the speakers, from all the people who are asking questions and others. What's the book you want me to write? What are the topics that you feel that you'd like to read about and haven't yet found a book that addresses it? Krish, do you want to think of that? Is there a book that you've been looking for?
I'm not much
think
of a
about it.
reader. I'll be honest. I'm
Okay.
not much of a reader. But so I don't really have, I did not really search for many choices.
But okay,
But
if you were not a reader, but you found a book on something and you thought, this is the book I want to read.
Yes, that was okay. So I really like fiction, but I also want a little of, realistic things merged into it. A little of, you can say, a little of facts merged with fiction, reality merged with fiction. I like that. And I know there are many books on the internet, like you can find some, but I haven't, when I read the back of the book, I haven't really found like a preference of mine yet. So, yeah.
I
So
love reality fiction. That's my favorite as well. And like in reality, what's a theme or a subject that you feel should be written about for young people like yourself?
Ma'am, the truths of the world, like everything which is true, because for children, many facts are hidden. That is true.
Yeah,
Like,
sure.
so I
That's
want,
the truth.
yes, I want like the truths to be mixed with fiction so that every child can understand them in like in an easy way, and it doesn't feel offensive to anyone. So
Yeah. Yeah. I have a story in this book. Do I have? Yeah. I have a story in this book because I'm not butter chicken. You can't order me. And it's a story that came out of a truth. I had a very dear friend who had a very violent husband, and she finally took her son and daughter and ran away from there and um, went to live with her parents. She had a mother who would say to her, no, you should go back. How long are you planning to stay? Are compromise kar lo? One day Her son, who was 12 or 13 at the time, came not one day, but gradually he started becoming violent. He one day beat his sister to the ground. And when his mother went to grab his arm and pull him off his sister, he turned around and he bit his mother's arm. He bit her really badly. And then he ran away from home and he came to my house, which was running distance. He was crying. And I said, well, how do you feel when this happened? He told me what happened and said, how did you feel? He said, I feel awful every time this happens. I hate myself doing that. So I said, then why do you do it? And his answer shocked me. He said, because I'm now the man of the house. And because he had seen the man of his house, his father, doing this, he thought that's how he needed to behave, although he hated behaving like that. So I wrote a story called Bablu's Bhabi in this book. When I told it to children, first I told it to children like you, urban, educated schools. And one of the things that often was repeated was, हाँ ये गाँव वगैरह में होता है. Doesn't really happen in cities. Happens in poor homes. It doesn't happen in our homes. Does it? Does it?
Sure does.
You think? Of course it does. Of course it does. When I read the story, so I knew I had to write another story and base it in an urban setting. This one I had set in a sort of semi-rural, urban slum kind of place. And then when I told the story to children who were from the walled city, much poorer children, in a very basic school, government school, I had told a ghost story and I told this story. Afterwards, all the children went away. One girl remained behind and said, was this story true? And I said, what do you think? And she said, well, the ghost story wasn't true, but the one about the bhabi being beaten was definitely true. So I said, how do you say with so much surety? And she says, because it happens in my house. By which time other children had come back, and many of them admitted to being witness to domestic violence in their own homes, neighbors, other relatives. And I asked them what they felt when they were witness to it or knew about it or saw the aftermath of it, the bruises, the cuts, the black eyes. And amongst the other things, what they all said is, हम बेबस महसूस करते हैं. We feel ourselves to be helpless. And I knew I had to write a story where children are not helpless, because I think that you are powerhouses. You are the instruments of change, not me. And through stories that empower you, you get empowered. It's really like, sticking your plug into a recharge point and recharging your energies, recharging your positive abilities to be that instrument of change.
Absolutely, ma'am. You're so right, because a lot of times we tend to think like that, like domestic violence is a side dish which is served up with poverty. It is not. It is something which is chronic. It is something which is like a disease, and it has to be treated like that. It has nothing to do with your monetary status in life. So I think that we need to understand and become, and at least stop being helpless. So that is very important. I think next is Shreyas. Shreyas? Hi, Shreyas.
Hello. So my name is Shreyas. I study in Sanskriti School, New Delhi, and I am in grade 7. So I have a question for you. In the world of the one who should not be named, satyrs, wizards, centaurs, vampires, werewolves, and demigods. All the stories where a child is put in a bubble of fiction, hugely successful genre generally, and it's a worldwide sensation. You picked to write about real life, about brushed under the carpet historical events, reality fiction, as you termed it, exposing our children to important and shunned events of our own country. Hats off to you. What made you pick this genre though?
That's a great question. As I think that writers often, or should, I feel, um, write the story that they want to read. And while I loved Harry Potter for very different reasons than many people did. Um, what I really connect with is reality fiction. A book like, let's say, The Boy in Striped Pajamas. Yeah, it's fiction. I don't know if you all have read it, but it's an astonishingly moving and powerful book which shows you how life can turn in crazy and sometimes frightening ways. It's a really fantastic book, and I was so blessed to be on a panel with the author. So I write what I would love to read. I write the books that I haven't found on bookshelves. I wish I could write that blockbuster mythology turned science fiction turned you know, super duper bestseller. So I could I could be you know, that known and successful. But I don't know if I can. I'm not saying I will never. I may just. Um, and I know that those books are so popular, and there's good reason. It's great. It's just that it's not what I love to read. And so it's not what I love to write. Simple as that.
Yeah, I guess I loved Harry Potter, but I read it as an adult. So I always thought that, oh, the Hogwarts letter missed me. She wrote it too late. But yes, there are times when a dose of reality is very important. And thankfully, a lot of authors are coming up with a lot of realistic fiction, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And let's hope more power to the creed. And I think we have Meher next. Can you please unmute Meher?
Hi.
And
Hello,
I
ma'am.
also wanted to say why, what were the reasons why I really liked Harry Potter. As I said, I liked them for different reasons than many
Please.
others. I liked the Harry Potter series because she was rejected. Joanne K. Rowling was rejected by 7 publishers before Bloomsbury. And even in Bloomsbury, the editors didn't see the gem that they had in their hands. It was a marketing person who, you know, there's something called a slush pile, which is sent in to publishers, unsolicited manuscripts. That means it's books that you've not assigned someone to write, but they come in. And so everybody just reads them, and it's called a slush pile because most of it goes into the dustbin. But this one marketing person started to read page by page by page and thought, no, this is something special. Called another one of her colleagues, started reading, and they started reading it. By the end of that hour and a half or whatever time it was, there were 7 of them sitting around the table, passing one page at a time and reading it, riveted. So that never be disheartened when you get rejections. If you believe in what you have done, it's right. Second thing is, because why was it rejected? Why was Harry Potter rejected by so many? Because The feedback she was getting was that the storyline is too complex, paragraphs are too large, the books are too thick, a lot of the book is too dark for young children. They should get much happier, happy. And the sentences were very complex and children would not understand. Great, that Harry Potter now, when worldwide or even in India, when you're looking at statistics of book sales, of what genres sell, they have to take out the Harry Potter series because it just skews the picture so badly because they are such big blockbuster sellers. And I'm so glad to prove so many publishers and adults wrong. Don't underestimate children.
That's a wonderful thought. Yes. Okay, Meher, you're on
Yes,
next.
sorry, Meher. I jumped into your.
No worries. We love hearing you. So though my daughter is in class 4th in DPS Vasankunj, and we have one of your books, which is, I think, so I'm gonna, one of your
Oh,
books which is
lovely.
signed by you too. So,
Oh, wow.
so yeah, so here's my question is, so in our childhood, we had our own wasting ways, going out, playing Ludo, playing gallery, gossiping. Then came the TV, then the cable connection, DTH, internet, and social media. Our wasting aways was shorter, but it still gave us time to read and being compelled. But with unlimited, uncontrolled, uncontrollable social media, how can how can we instill the habit of reading for our children in this world of social media?
Yeah, sure. Sure. It's a challenge. Television was a challenge. I think social media is not quite the demon it's made out to be. Because children are also getting to know about what's out there. How are they going to get to know? Look at the number of book-related posts that you get. And it's not only me who gets. A lot of kids write into me saying, oh, your post popped up and we heard about this book. Where can I get it? I think that this book should have ended like this. Where do you get your titles from? These are actual feedback that I've got from off social media, off my posts. In fact, with a lot of children, uh, they do say that we didn't know about you as a writer, but then we saw your posts or we heard your podcast. Because how else will they get to know? How else would librarians get to know? So, first of all, reading is an exclusive kind of activity. It always was. I think and I believe, and so does Ruskin Bond, by the way, believe that children are reading a lot more actually. It doesn't matter that they're not reading a cover to cover book. They are reading, they're reading online, they're reading a lot more, they're reading a lot of diverse things. Some of it you may approve of and some you may not. But it's the question of access again, which I said that I would keep coming back to. Social media is also a way of access. Reading is a habit. Do it often enough and you can't do without it. If the child sees you reading, laughing with a book, if he sees you, if you've had in his in his early years a lap time where you're lovingly holding your book and reading him a story, telling him a story, or if you've challenged your child by saying, I'm not the chicken. What a weird title of a book. What do you think it's about? and the child starts saying, I think the book would be about this is the what? It could be something completely strange. And I said, okay, should we find out what the book is really about? Or say that, I said, this book and this story ends like this. I don't know, did you like it? I'm not sure I liked it. Should we think of another ending? Or get them to stop reading a book halfway through and say, write an ending, read and make up an ending of how the book finishes. And then go back and say, okay, what did the author think? How did they finish it? Whose may be better? And their ending may be much more satisfying to them. And so in the book, whether it's in a library or in your home, on the last page, on these end papers, get them either to write it or staple in their own ending, give them a sense of ownership of that book. So this book, Unmasked, is stories of the pandemic. And I wrote it during the pandemic, and I thought it would be, I would call it COVID's 19, and there would be 19 stories, because everybody and everyone was bound together by COVID. So I wanted 19 stories, but I couldn't get a hook to hang the book on as a whole, even if it's a collection of diverse short stories. There should be something which holds it together, right? I was doing a writing workshop, and a 13 or maybe 12-year-old at that time wrote an absolutely stunning poem in that called What Would You Do? Her name is Jia Pardal. She was 13 years old. And it was about the migrants who walked home, and many died on their way home during the pandemic when they were suddenly out of jobs and they were suddenly out of any means of earning money or going out to buy food. And so they thought it would be better to go home. And so here she wrote, there they were walking in groups, thinking nothing. For if you are stranded, unknown city, unkind people, no food, ask yourself, what would you do? You'll simply pick up your bags like them, rest in rags like them, pick up your food scraps like them, do menial work like them. For if you are stranded, unknown city, unkind people, no food, no shelter, ask yourself, what would you do? And it goes on, and it still gives me goosebumps, this. And they're beautiful illustrations by Priya Kurian. So I thought, while I was writing this book, I started with a child's voice. And everybody in the world has had a COVID experience. No one has been untouched by it. And so the 19th story is your COVID story. And there are blank pages at the end. So when you get this book, you read a child's voice first, then you read these interwoven, interlinked stories that are through this, and then you write your own COVID story or poem. And so each copy becomes a unique copy of this title. I don't know why I started to tell that, but what was the question? Sorry.
Absolutely. Wow. I think so. It's, instilling, just it's a curious child at the end of the day. And just to ensure to, make him, of course, answer all the questions, but I think it's beautiful the way you've said it.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And thank you for sharing
you.
that lovely poem. And yes, you're right. It gives you goosebumps because it's, because honestly, you don't know what would you do. Possibly the same thing. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, so I turned the book around to all these challenges, and each person asks that question. What should I do? What can I do?
True.
What should I do? Each of the stories really asks that question.
Absolutely. Ayan, I think you are up next.
Yo, I'm Ayan. I've read a couple of your books and I study in Shikshanta school. Now I have a question. You are writing realistic fiction, hard-hitting topics from our history, topics that shook us then and shake us now. Does it disturb you when you write on these, and does it linger on?
Yeah. These two books. This book I wrote in the course of one night. It's called The Little Bird Who Held the Sky Up with His Feet. I saw at tea time a dead sparrow, and lots of other sparrows. That time there were sparrows coming and sort of gathering on that dead sparrow. And I noticed that the sparrow was lying on its back with its claws up. And I wondered, why do birds go belly up when they die? I wrote it in the course of one night. It was about 6:37 in the morning when I finished the first draft of it. And I went up and I'm weeping because the little sparrow dies. It saves the world and then it dies because it's only a little creature. And what I was really saying is that you're never too young, you're never too small. The smallest may have the courage more courage than the biggest. I went up to my room and I was crying. My husband got up. He said, "What happened?" And I said, "Piddi died." He said, "Who's Piddi?" So I said, "This little bird in the book." And he said, "Oh God, you're back to writing." Similarly, No Guns at My Son's Funeral, this one, which is a book based in Kashmir about a 12-year-old boy who becomes a terrorist,
I have actually read
is
that
sort
book.
of seduced into terrorism. He's kind of, his innocence is played by a puppet master and he becomes a terrorist. And so it's a terrible title. But I knew from title, because that's what came to me first. I knew from the title that this boy would die in the end. And I grew to love him because I said, it becomes my child, it becomes me. And I was kind of writing all kinds of other things, adding chapters, adding some action and everything. And I knew that what I'm doing is I'm postponing that moment when I have to kill my child. And finally I did. I was at my parents' house up in the hills. In the afternoon, I sat and wrote Aftab's death. And my mother came out and she said, "Oh, what's happened?" Because I'm weeping. And I said, "Aftab is died." She said, "Who's Aftab?" And I said, "The character in my book." And she nearly slapped me, because she said, "You're always giving us such a fright." But to me, that's what it was, the pain of losing this boy who I had given birth to, right? I had given birth to, I had nurtured him, I had grown him up till he was 12 years old, and then he died, and I had killed him. How painful is that? So it's very difficult to go to those dark places, but I have a trick for my own sanity and my family's sanity. I often write two books at the same time. When I'm stuck with one, or I'm just in such a dark place and I know I've got to regroup myself, I write another book. I go to the other book. Often it's a collection of short stories and a novel at the same time. And at that time, I was very happy and very lucky that the book Wingless came to me. I knew I was wanting to write a book on disability, and our innate fear of people with disabilities because we don't know how to deal with them. We know we should be kind, we should be good, we should be, inclusive and all these words. But when you're actually nose to nose with a person with a disability like mental health or mental retardation or something, it's scary. We don't know how to behave. But I needed to write a funny book because I was writing No Guns at my son's funeral. How do you write a funny book on disability without being disrespectful? I found the answer, or rather, the answer found me. And I wrote a book with the most fabulous illustrations. I will share one with you. It's a book which I perform. Look at.
Okay.
He's a fabulous illustrator called Atanu Roy. So yeah, that's how I do go to very dark places, and I need to. But I try and sort of, a pressure cooker needs that CT because otherwise it'll burst. I need that CT, and often that is another book.
True that. But yes, I think this is a great idea to balance it out with humor. And humor can be very poignant as well. So I guess you're bang on, and we'll keep that in mind. I think the next is Namrata ji. Would you unmute yourself? You're on next.
Anji.
Yes, please
Anji.
unmute.
Yes, I'm Shivanvita. I'm Shivanvita Sanyal. I'm a housewife and a reader too. Good evening, Paro Anand ji. This is the book at present I'm reading, being Gandhi. I've just started with Boris Khan and Preeti ma'am, but my illustration is good, so is the writing. But my question is a bit lengthy. I have two questions. Firstly, हिंदी में पूछूं या
दोनों?
I mean,
किसी में भी.
किसी में भी, हाँ.
Yeah,
My first question. My first question is the decline in the reading habit among the children. That's what I'm noticing. And another thing, no, I'm continuing this question only. Children don't want to read the classics, whether it's Charles Dickens, Mahadevi Verma, Tagore. They only read that in their text. They have to give the exams, score marks, that kind of thing. Whatever the reason may be. And they're having very good authors, like in Bengal also, Leela Majumdar, Asha Purna Devi. They have also written very good children literature. You must be knowing. And secondly, the regional language writers, as you told earlier also, they're very much sidelined. Maybe we're not getting good translators or whatever the reason may be. Once quoted by a very well-known Bengali writer, Sunil Gangopadhyay, he is no more. He said, after 50 years, no one is going to read my writings, my books. He wrote Shei Shumai, for which I think he received a Sahitya Akademi Award. Yes. And with a great grief, he said, and then people asked him that why? We still remember Tagore. He said, we remember Tagore because Tagore wrote songs. I didn't. I'm a writer. I write poetry. I write novels and short stories. And no one will remember me after 50 years because after 50 years, no one is going to read Bangla or any other regional language. So how can we revive? How can we bring back the reading of the regional authors? And this is very much required, as well as the classics, whether the classics is English or in any other languages. And another thing, especially what I found, the parents also, I don't know why, most of the time, they feel very uncomfortable speaking in their own mother tongue. And people think that if you don't speak in English, you are someone who is a bit a downgrade. I mean, I don't know, maybe this, what I found. So how can we revive these things? Because this is very much required. In this way, our literature will fade away. And another young authoress, which I'm going to, T.S. Shobha, Shashi Tharoor's sister, I think. She also writes T.S. Yeah. Yes. I think she's a new generation children author. So, but my first two questions are really concerned among the society because we need readers. This is the only thing can make you more creative, make you more thoughtful kind of person.
You've asked two very, very important questions. And, children, it may sound like a very grown-up kind of concern, but actually it does concern you very much. One, the decline in reading, and especially the reading of classics. Honestly, I find, and again, I'm kind of really sometimes criticized for saying this out loud. I find some of the classics difficult to read now. Some I love. I love to read Shakespeare because I love to read plays. And I think his are so intricate, and the facility with the language and all of that. I don't like to read Charles Dickens. I find his writing, I'm going to have to cut my tongue off after saying this. I find his writing tedious. It belongs to another time. And the trouble is also that we keep giving, as I think Krish had said earlier, that it's the same old Panchtantra and all of that. And parents and librarians feeling, agar ye nahi padha, to kuch nahi padha. पर अगर वो नहीं पढ़ना चाहता है, वो नहीं पढ़ना चाहता है, he may come back to it, he may not. She may love another kind of book. Reading Jane Austen for a child of today who is reading very different love stories. The intimacy factors are totally different from Jane Austen's time, right? Where a dropped handkerchief was such a romantic thing. It isn't anymore. Nobody carries a hanky only, so let alone anything else. Let's not keep pushing the classics. Have them there. You can talk about them to your children. But let them also choose. You read what they're reading, and then maybe they'll want to read what you are reading. I was talking about the Mahabharata with so much excitement. My children actually picked up the Mahabharata and read it. It's not a children's book by any means, greater than Homer and the Odyssey and all those classics that we keep trying to make our children read. Let them choose. If we put them onto, like that mother who was saying, choose this book and this book only, her child wasn't going to read it. If he had had his own choice, he may have come back to the book that she wanted him to read, but not in this forced way. Second thing about Indian languages, I was working in the National Book Trust, heading the National Center for Children's Literature. I myself got a Sahitya Akademi award for children's literature. I've been looking year on year at what are the books that have won. Access. There's no access to the ones in different languages. Very little access. Second, even if it's won the Sahitya Akademi Award for children's literature, it won't, that language ki book you won't find it easy to get that book. One. Second thing is, Sahitya Akademi is supposed to translate award-winning books. The books that win the Sahitya Akademi Award. I got the Sahitya Akademi Award, I don't know, years ago. I'm forgetting the date even. But I'm forgetting the year. But till date, it hasn't been translated into any of the Indian languages as they're supposed to. Similarly, the language books that won have not been translated into other languages or English. How do we access? And if we don't access, and if we, अगर ये किताब हमारे हाथ तक पहुंचेगी नहीं, और अगर ये किताब दूर नहीं जाएगी, तो वो जो एक बेचारा लेखक है, वो अपनी जिंदगी कैसे बनाएगा, कैसे चलाएगा? And there's so much fear of writing out of the ordinary books in the languages. छोटे बच्चों के लिए लिखी जाती हैं, बड़े बच्चों के लिए बहुत कम. There are two beautiful magazines, Cycle for older children, which is in Hindi, and Pluto for younger children, which is in Hindi also. Wonderful, contemporary, beautifully brought out, beautifully illustrated book. So that is a start. But वो हिंदी में है. I was just in Goa at the Konkani Bhasha Mandal had a Bal Sahitya Parishad, which they just held, and I was keynote speaker. Again, I'm just saying this because there were a lot of young children's books for young children. There were a lot of stories about Pyare Kutte, etc. Meri Pyari Billi. And I found this in many languages. There are not any which actually ones that children want to read. That's why I'm asking children, what do you want to read? Tell me so I can write it. I am now personally writing somewhat in Hindi, and I've just embarked on writing my first story in Punjabi, but those are for younger kids. Those are, but I have a book coming out, a collection of short stories for teenagers coming out, being brought out by Ektara in Hindi.
Oh, that will be wonderful. We will look forward to that because जैसा कि
I'm writing it in Punjabi. Did I say Hindi?
Yes, Hindi.
you did say Hindi.
I'm writing it in Punjabi. Yeah.
तो आप फिर
My
उसका
first.
भी translation कराना पड़ेगा.
Yes, that will require. जब मैं स्कूल में थी,
And I have actually, I have actually two books which are bilingual. So this is a book called Babies in My Heart, which is about different kinds of families. And you'll see that there are pictures with two mothers who have a baby,
yes,
two fathers.
Interesting.
There's a father on a wheelchair. There are pictures of the mother working on her computer, the father looking after the baby. So we've just tried to, for very young children, broaden the idea of family. It doesn't have to be one papa, one mama, and that's it. You know, this is also a bilingual book, both of them are bilingual books in English and in Hindi. And this is about a baby kangaroo stepping out and dealing with childhood fear.
That's very interesting. And I think that idea of the woman working on the computer while the father looks after the baby is very progressive because most of the children's literature that we come across, वो जो है kitchen में साड़ी पहन के हैं और बाकी लोग जो हैं वो अपना काम कर रहे हैं. So वो थोड़ा सा हम वही लकीर के फकीर बने हुए हैं. वो थोड़ी सी मुश्किल वाली बात है. But I think the thought process has become a little more progressive. I think we are
Father and
running
mother are together cutting the vegetables. There's it's a beautiful book actually. Very gently and beautifully illustrated.
That'll be, I think it's a good idea to have these bilingual books then.
yes, very much.
Right. I think we are, though we did start a little late, but we are running out of time. Oh, nice.
Yeah. Yes.
So I think we have a few more questions and a
Yeah.
few more people. So let's
Yes,
try.
sure. I'm really sorry. I'm giving very long answers, but
No, please. It's we are very happy to have you over, so that is no problem. Except that we don't want to encroach upon too much of your time as either.
I'm
I
happy. I'm happy to talk to children anytime.
Okay, I think Sangeeta ji is next. Sangeeta Bajpayee, would you please unmute yourself?
Yes. Paroji, I love your book titles. They're so very attractive and so funny, but the book has so much more, which is, which catches the eye first and then the mind. So I'm quoting Albert Einstein when I say generations to come, it may well be, will scarce believe that such a man as this one ever in flesh and blood walked upon this earth. Um, have we reached that point? And why do we have to introduce Gandhi to our next generation?
I'm glad that you asked about being Gandhi, because when it was 150 years of Gandhi, and HarperCollins, the publisher, the editor, asked me to write a book on Gandhi. She said, "Will you write a book on Gandhi?" And my first answer was no, I can't. What more is there to say on Gandhi? Children are kind of fed up of reading about Gandhi. And she said, "But we want you to write a book such as one that has not been written before." So I started looking at what do children learn about Gandhi, and I found that what we have done as adults, as governments, is to kind of dry out Gandhi and make him paper thin, stick him onto currency notes, and we put thuk on Gandhi's image when we are counting our currency. We've hardened him, and we've dried him up and put him into dry textbooks. We've hardened him and put him onto and made him statues that are high up on pedestals. And so we can never aspire to be this godlike person. If you ask a child, what do you want to be when you grow up? No child's going to say, I want to be God when I grow up, right? Would any of you kids ever say, I want to be God? No. But the more I read and researched about Gandhi, I thought there was so much to this person, not God, this human being, flaws and all. And we're so scared of talking about Gandhi's flaws. And we're so scared of getting to the core of Gandhi. When I started writing another book, a totally different book on Gandhi, which I thought was going to be a little child's story. When I started writing it, it became something else. I had lived through the 1984 riots. I had been to a school where I talked about the 1984 riots, and the class had responded saying, yeah, ma'am, but that's ancient history. We're born. It's ancient history. Talk about today. And I was so shocked because to me, 1984 is alive in my heart and all that happened. And so I started writing this book, very unplotted. I just jumped into the deep end about this child who's, when I go into a school and I say, I'm going to talk about this book being Gandhi, and their faces, I say, ma'am, no, especially those who know me from other books. No, read us something from some other book. And then I said, wait, give it a chance. And the first chapter title is My Life Sucks, Just Sucks. Kids are like, what? a book on Gandhi, which starts with this. And then it says, Preeti ma'am, she's nice and everything, but you've got to admit she's one of the most boring teachers on earth. She's the queen of Boringistan. Um, so, where does Gandhi figure in this? But it's not about Gandhi the man. It's not about Gandhi um, during the freedom struggle and our freedom struggle. It's set in 1984. And it's about doing a deep dive, going beyond all the BS that we've taught you about Gandhi, and going deep in and finding your inner Gandhi and being, therefore, the title, Being Gandhi. How can I be Gandhi? And that realization comes sort of deep into the book. When I finished writing this book, she found me crying again. I cry a lot when I'm writing. And she said, what happened? And I said, I think I've just written a beautiful book. I really consider it a beautiful book, even if I say it myself, and that's kind of very arrogant of me, but I do think.
You have my endorsement there, because I cried when I read this book, and I howled. I cried, like I cried properly. And you're absolutely correct, ma'am, because we have converted Gandhi into a very preachy, very prosaic model, when actually he had a great sense of humor. I think a lot of time, Ramchand Guha, when he talks about Gandhi, he comes up with these humorous anecdotes about Gandhi, which nobody talks about. And it is our fault. It is not like he said, I am God. It's our fault that we have put him on a pedestal and have decided to worship him.
Exactly.
But you have to let the man survive. So I think this was a wonderful book to do that. And it's one of my favorites.
Thank you.
And like I said, I cried. Okay, moving on.
Thank you for your tears.
Totally worthwhile. Okay, we'll
Thank
move
you,
on
Suvir,
to...
for that book that you're holding.
Okay, the next is Shireen. Shireen?
Hello, ma'am. So my name is Shireen Gupta and I study in class 5 in Singapore. So my question is, it is the season of exams and we're busy in the pursuit of marks. With help from everybody around us, higher marks will bring us success and certify us as geniuses, as has been told to us who follow the same path in earlier generation. Arjun Basan, a certified genius, doesn't get high on the marks ladder. Will he not be successful?
Oh, so we are talking about the secret diary of the world's worst genius.
World's worst genius.
Basin. Yes, yes.
Yes,
ma'am. Please go ahead.
Oh, you have a copy of it, Manan? Did you just show? The secret diary of the world's worst genius. I was not a genius. I am not. I never will be. I never was. But children had said to me that they wanted me to write a book about pressure that parents and families put, and on the importance of marks. I had experienced that. I was a very poor student. And I would, if I did well in theater, I won a prize for as best actress or something like that somewhere, the teachers would always say to me, if only you, well, congratulations, but if only you were as good in your studies. It would really crush me. Until I realized that it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. If I can be good at whatever I'm good at. And geniuses are not only recorded by numbers and good marks in academics. You can be a genius in many things. And so that's what I wanted to bring about. What did you think of the ending, Shireen?
Ma'am, I haven't read the book.
You haven't? We haven't. Okay. Because I'll tell you what, I'll share a secret. I feel I should have written a better ending. When I reread the book, and I was reading it out to students, I was a bit disappointed in myself because I felt as though I didn't know how to finish it. And so I just finished it. And I felt I took a shortcut, which I've never done before or after. So I really wish I could rewrite this book. But children have said that they love what the ending was. So who am I to judge? I don't know.
Nothing succeeds like success. So I think we're good. I think we're coming to the last question for the session. And that's from Pooja ji. And after that, if any of the attendees would like to ask a question from Paro ma'am, you can just raise your hand and we can go forward with that. But Pooja Pandey, could you just unmute yourself and then you can,
Hi.
I think that.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Richa. First and foremost, heartiest congratulations on completing 100 episodes. So I think that is really commendable. And Paro ma'am, my question to you is that there are some children who are born into terrorism. It is a reality for them. That is what they have seen it all, right? And there are others who are away from this fact of terrorism, and they are made to ignore, about the terrorism, and adults generally brush it under the carpet. They don't want to talk about it. How do we bring children from both these totally contrasting worlds to understand each other?
Wonderful question. When I was reading out No Guns at my son's funeral and Weed, which is the family of a terrorist, a girl in Bombay said, I always knew that people are dying in Kashmir. I never thought that people live there too. And I thought that was such a poignant way of putting across what I had been trying to say in a whole novel, in 2 novels that I'd been trying to say. Children, I work a lot with young people in difficult circumstances, whether it's children with disability or children growing up in conflict or extreme poverty or tribal areas. I try and work some of my time with those children. And they all say that they want their stories told. I get them to do some writing and they say, nay, you write our stories. We want our stories to go out there. I'll tell you, in this book, Like Smoke, which is the book that won the Sahitya Akademi Award, I have a story, and the very first story actually starts with the words, I hate Muslims. That's kind of a shocking way for a book for children to start or say or anything. It's not what Paro Anand feels. I have a Kashmiri son. I've adopted a Kashmiri young man now. He's in his 30s and about to become a father. But I have been with him since he was 12. And so I hate Muslims is not something that I would ever think to say. It's something that I heard in a Delhi school. In break time, some child outside saying, I hate Muslims. And those words came like an arrow to my heart. And I leaned out to see who said this and what's going on. And there was this girl, about 12 years old. She had said this. her group of friends were all nodding and agreeing, yes, that they hated Muslims too. I saw one boy standing alag se, pale-faced and rooted to the spot. He was a Muslim boy. And these children had not even bothered to lower their voice to say this. And so I knew I had to write that story. And I wrote about it, of this young girl who is a Kashmiri Pandit girl, a Hindu girl, whose father is killed, and she's told in Kashmir, and she's told that he's been killed by a Muslim bomb. And so she's brought up to hate Muslims. And they leave the city, they come to a new city, they leave Kashmir, they come to a new city. And there she goes to a new school, and there's this boy, and he's really good looking, and she has immediate butterflies in her stomach and a crush on him and everything. And they sort of are falling in love until she discovers he's Muslim. And then she pedals back and she's angry. And he asks her, I don't know why you're angry. What I don't understand is why you're angry at me. And she says that my father was killed and he was killed by a Muslim bomb. So he says in reply that all Muslims are not terrorists and bombs don't have a religion. At the end of telling this, reading this story to in a school in Jaipur, one boy stood up and he said, I'll agree with what you said in the book that all Muslims are not terrorists, but you'll have to agree with me that almost all terrorists are Muslims. And what do you have to say about that? It was a 12-year-old boy speaking, little fellow. And the first thought was, how does he know to even say this? Where has he got this from? And I realized that, how much we, along with khana and dinner and everything, we are also feeding our children hatred, discrimination. I was lucky that an answer came to me on the spur of the moment. Some, higher being said, Paro, say this. And the answer was, I said, okay, let's put aside religion for a moment. Let's think of a more serious, let's think of another thing altogether. Let's think of the crime of rape. And the teachers were kind of shocked that I'd used the word rape in the school. I asked the students, these were class 7 and above, up to senior school. I asked them if they knew what rape was, and they all said, yes, they did. Of course they did. So I said, look, of course, we can all agree that all men are not rapists. But you'll have to agree with me that almost all rapists are men. So then by your logic, let's hate all men. Let's not give them jobs. Let's not give them our homes on rent. Let's not admit them to our schools. Let's not let our children be friends with them. No girls to be friends. Let's shun boys. I said, beta, I don't even know your name, but I'll hate you. Why? Because you're a potential rapist. Does that agree with you? Does that sit well with you? And his hands were fists. And I was nose to nose with him. And I almost thought he may hit me because I had called him a potential rapist. Bari sabha mein, pure school ke samne, teachers ke samne. But suddenly, he started to clap. And the whole auditorium got up and clapped. And I got a standing ovation. And this boy said, I finally understand what? I finally understand the logic of what you said. So that's how children get to know about stories of others. Not only children in conflict situations in Kashmir. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. I keep thinking I'll give a short answer and then I go on and on.
No, but that's perfect, ma'am. Thank you very much. And honestly, I think I will not, it's difficult to give you a standing ovation, but I think that's an absolutely wonderful answer and kind of sums up everything very well. I think Akriti wanted to ask you, and then that's the last question for the day. Are you there, Akriti? If I don't know where, if Akriti has already left, then I think we can, I believe she's left now.
Excuse me, can
So-
I ask a question? That's not much.
Please, Sana, but let's keep it short today.
Yeah. So,
And I will too. Yeah.
so recently I did my English exam and we had a composition part of it and we have to write our own composition. Right? And it's marked around 8 marks. So I remember one of my friends writing about this wonderful story about this imaginary place and everything. And my teacher told her that yes, it is a great story, but it does not, the writing is horrible. And she didn't get more than like 3 marks. The point was that my question to you is like, can you actually mark or like judge a person's imagination by a green pen and 8 marks? Can you? I mean, how everybody writes is different. Some writers write whole paragraphs about the same thing, and some change things in every single paragraph. So maybe, and when I read that composition, I thought that was the most brilliant fiction short story I had ever read. So, how do you make these kind of educational prospects of our schooling system about imaginary uh, characters and compositions, these kind of things, actually judge uh, accurately about uh, someone's potential? How do you do that?
Yeah. Sorry, I think either my internet, no, my seems okay. Yeah, well, first of all, I would never, ever, in my wildest dreams, call somebody's creative work. I also had people tell me I had been awarded, I'd been given an award by the Russian government, and I had a party and everything, and somebody who considered herself a much better writer, and I think she was a bit unhappy that she hadn't got that award, but I had. So for the party, she gave me a gift, which was how to write English properly. And I think, in life, you've got to also develop a slightly thicker skin. And if it works for your friend who wrote that, then it works. And sometimes in the educational system, okay, you've got to toe the line, 2 and 2 just has to make 4 and there's no way about it. But certainly for an essay, it should never have been called horrible. You can give suggestions. That's what a good editor should do. I get suggestions from editors, and sometimes younger editors feel nervous about telling me that, I need to change something in a story, which I don't think is the right thing. An editor's job or a teacher's job is to help sort of polish that diamond and make it shine. Certainly not to call it horrible. So keep writing. And I was rejected a whole lot before I got my first book published. J.K. Rowling, as I said, was rejected 7 times. And in fact, do you know that she was told to publish the writer's name as J.K. Rowling, because they said otherwise boys will not read the Harry Potter books if it's written by Joanne K. Rowling. And so she agreed to J.K. Rowling, but now she writes as Joanne K. Rowling. Boys, would you have read it if it was Joanne K. Rowling instead of J.K.?
100%.
Yes.
Yes, 100%.
Krish?
Yes,
Yeah.
because the author's name doesn't bother me much. I like the plot of the book.
Exactly.
I think our
Yeah.
boys are a lot more progressive than the editors gave them credit for. So that's wonderful.
Exactly.
Thank you, boys,
Yep.
for your vote of confidence. We really appreciate it. And so that brings us to the end of this session. Now I have to share something with you. It is for the first time today, we've been having events. For the first time today, we got somebody who went rogue on our channel. We got a hacker. Somebody hacked into our chat system. And that is why we couldn't connect in the first 10 minutes. And that person kept on hacking back and forth. And this is the first time it has happened, which was so weird. But thanks
it shows
to
how
the
popular you are, that you're
I don't know. I mean, I think they must have been bored out of their wits, so they left and realized that, oh, it's only about books. Oh, okay. We don't want to hang around here. They must have thought that this looks like some kind of interesting platform for something else. But books tend to do that to people at times. If you don't feel like getting intellectually stimulated, so you leave. So that's for the hacker, but so be it. But thank you everyone for hanging around for so long, despite the hacking and everything. And thank you, ma'am, for a wonderful, wonderful session. What we are going to do next, and this is going to be
I
a
wanted
treat
to
for
say,
everyone.
Richa, sorry to jump in, but before we end, I wanted to say a huge congratulations for the 100th episode and a huge thank you for asking me to be a part of it.
Thank you very much, ma'am. It has been a wonderful, wonderful session. And hopefully soon, sometime in the near future, we will have a physical session with you where everyone can meet you face to face. So that will be perfect if you permit us. So, and thank you everyone for being a wonderful audience, very insightful questions and equally insightful answers. Thank you, and we shall see you soon. Bye-bye and good night.